The Galactic Hunter Academy's orientation hall buzzed with nervous energy as hundreds of young beings from across the known systems gathered for their first day. Crystalline Zephyrians clicked their translucent claws against marble floors, while furry Valkyrian cubs huddled together in small groups, their ears twitching at every sound. The air shimmered with the heat signatures of various species, each adapted to their homeworlds and specialized hunting techniques. Professor Kethvar, a towering insectoid with compound eyes that reflected the chamber's blue lighting, stepped onto the central platform. His voice carried through universal translators embedded in every student's neural implant. Welcome, future hunters of the galaxy. You have been selected from millions of applicants across 400 worlds to join the most prestigious hunting program in known space. The crowd stirred with pride and anticipation. These were the elite, beings who had demonstrated exceptional tracking abilities, combat prowess, or tactical intelligence on their respective worlds. Some had hunted the crystal beasts of Nepturus 7. Others had tracked shadow wolves through the endless forests of Greenworld Prime. This year, Professor Kethvar continued, his mandibles clicking in what passed for a smile among his species. We have students from 67 different worlds. Each of you brings unique skills honed by your planet's specific challenges. His compound eyes swept across the assembly. However, I must inform you that we have an unusual addition to this year's class. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The Valkyrian cubs' ears perked up higher, while the Zephyrians' crystalline bodies chimed softly as they shifted with curiosity. A student from a world designated as Class 12 Deathworld has enrolled. This is unprecedented in our Academy's 700-year history. The professor's tone carried a mixture of scientific fascination and barely concealed concern. The being in question comes from a planet called Earth, located in what they call the Sol system. The murmuring grew louder. Most students had heard whispers of death worlds, planets so hostile that they were considered uninhabitable by galactic standards. These worlds typically harbored no intelligent life, as survival itself consumed all available evolutionary energy. The student's name is Marcus Chen, Professor Kethvar announced. He will be joining advanced tracking and tactical hunting, despite having no formal training in recognized galactic hunting methods. A tall draconian student near the front raised a scaled hand. Professor, how can a being from a death world possibly compete with trained hunters? Surely survival instincts alone cannot match our specialized education. An excellent question, Sisvek, the professor replied. This is precisely why this case is so interesting to our research division. According to preliminary assessments, this human possesses certain adaptations that may prove relevant to our studies. The crystalline chiming of agitated Zephyrians filled the air. One of them, her body glowing with pale pink stress patterns, spoke up. What kind of adaptations? Are we safe in the same facility as a Deathworld predator? Professor Kethvar's antenna twitched, a sign of amusement among his species. The human is classified as an omnivorous pack hunter with remarkable endurance capabilities. However, Earth humans are not apex predators on their world. They achieved dominance through tool use, cooperation, and adaptability rather than raw physical power. This information seemed to relax the assembly somewhat. Pack hunters were common throughout the galaxy, and tool use was hardly unusual among civilized species. The human will arrive tomorrow, the professor continued. I expect all students to treat him with the same respect afforded to any academy member. Remember, we are here to learn from each other's diverse hunting traditions. As the orientation concluded and students began filtering out toward their dormitory assignments, conversations buzzed with speculation about the mysterious Deathworlder. Most seemed skeptical that any being from such a hostile environment could contribute meaningfully to their advanced studies. Sixara, a graceful Etherian with flowing tentacle-like appendages, glided alongside her new roommate, a stocky Terukan whose rocky skin could withstand extreme temperatures. I researched Earth during the break between sessions, she said, her voice carrying a melodic quality that made other species naturally want to listen. The environmental data is horrifying. Gravity nearly twice galactic standard, unstable weather patterns, predators that hunt in coordinated groups. Her companion Rocktar nodded gravely. The atmospheric composition alone would kill most species within minutes. Oxygen levels that would cause cellular damage, plus trace gases that are toxic to 70% of known life forms. And yet, Zixar amused, they somehow developed space travel and interstellar communication. The mathematical probability of intelligent life emerging from such conditions approaches zero. Perhaps, suggested Rocktar, the human will provide insight into extreme environment survival techniques. Our curriculum does include hostile world operations. As night fell over the academy, students settled into their dormitories, their minds filled with questions about their mysterious new classmate. None of them could imagine how drastically their understanding of hunting, survival, and what it meant to be a predator would change in the coming days. The next morning would bring revelations that would shake the foundations of everything they thought they knew about the galaxy's most effective hunters. The morning sun cast long shadows across the academy's main courtyard as students gathered for their first practical exercise. Professor Kethvar stood beside a modest transport vessel, its hull bearing the insignia of the Galactic Transit Authority. The air hummed with anticipation and nervous energy as various species clustered in their familiar groups. Before we begin today's tracking simulation, the professor announced, I would like you to meet your new classmate. The transport's boarding ramp descended with a soft hiss, and Marcus Chen stepped into the alien morning light. He appeared unremarkable by galactic standards, bipedal, roughly average height with brown hair and dark eyes that seemed to take in everything around him with quiet intensity. He wore simple academy-issued clothing that looked almost comically basic compared to the specialized gear his classmates sported. Several students exchanged glances. This was the fearsome Deathworlder they had spent the evening discussing. He looked fragile compared to Rocktar's rock-like hide or Sisvek's armored scales. Marcus, Professor Kethvar gestured with one of his forearms. Please introduce yourself to the class. The human stepped forward with an easy confidence that surprised many observers. Hi everyone. I'm Marcus Chen from Earth. I'm looking forward to learning from all of you and hopefully sharing some of what I know about tracking and hunting. His voice was calm and carried well without amplification, an unusual trait among species that typically relied on technological enhancement for communication across distances, says Sisvek. The draconian who had questioned the human's presence the day before slithered forward slightly. What exactly did you hunt on your death world? What qualifies you for advanced tactical hunting? Marcus smiled, and several students noticed how the expression seemed genuine rather than the social display common among many species. Well, on Earth I mainly hunted white-tailed deer, elk, and wild boar. Sometimes predators like wolves when they threatened livestock. I also did some survival training in various environments. The assembled students looked puzzled. These seemed like relatively standard prey animals, nothing that would indicate exceptional hunting prowess. Zixara's tentacles swayed thoughtfully. What weapons did you use? Energy projectors? Molecular disruptors? Mostly a bow and arrow, Marcus replied. Sometimes a rifle for longer distances. Occasionally just traps and snares. A stunned silence fell over the group. Primitive projectile weapons? Several students' stress indicators began showing elevated readings on their environmental suits. Professor Kethvar's mandibles clicked rapidly, his species equivalent of barely suppressed laughter. Perhaps we should begin the exercise. Today's simulation involves tracking a Nexarian shadowcat through varied terrain. The creature has a 4-hour head start and is programmed with advanced evasion protocols. He gestured toward a massive holographic display that materialized above the courtyard. The hunting ground spans 50 square kilometers and includes forest, grassland, rocky terrain, and wetlands. Standard Academy protocol allows teams of 4 students with full technological support. Environmental scanners, heat detection, pheromone trackers, and gravitational disturbance sensors. The display showed a 3-dimensional map, dotted with the life signs of various holographic creatures designed to create distractions and false trails. However, the professor continued, since we have an unusual situation, I propose we run 2 parallel exercises. The standard teams will use all available technology. Marcus will track the same creature using only the primitive methods from his world. Rocktar's rocky features shifted into what might have been concern. Professor, surely that puts the human at an impossible disadvantage. The Shadowcat is designed to challenge our most advanced students working as coordinated teams. An interesting point, Professor Kethvar agreed. What do you think, Marcus? Would you prefer to join one of the standard teams? Marcus looked up at the holographic display, studying the terrain with an intensity that made several students uncomfortable. There was something unsettling about how completely still he became, as if some predatory focus had suddenly activated. "I'll take the challenge," he said finally, "though I'd like to ask a few questions about the creature first." "Certainly. What's its natural habitat and primary food source? What time of day is it most active? Does it travel in groups or alone? What are its main predators in the wild?" The questions surprised the assembled students. Most would have immediately asked about the creature's technological countermeasures or energy signature patterns. Professor Kethvar's compound eyes seemed to gleam with interest. Fascinating questions. The Nexarian shadowcat is a solitary nocturnal hunter that preys on medium-sized herbivores. Its natural habitat is dense forest with rocky outcroppings for denning. Its primary predators are aerial hunters that attack from above. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "What's the weather been like recently? Any rain in the forecast?" "There was precipitation 2 days ago, and the atmospheric processors indicate moderate humidity levels throughout the exercise area." "Perfect." Marcus's smile had a different quality now, something that made the nearby Felcarian cubs instinctively step closer to their packmates. "When do we start?" As the teams began forming and equipment was distributed, none of the technologically advanced students could have predicted that they were about to witness a demonstration of hunting principles that predated their civilizations by thousands of years. The Shadowcat had no idea it was being hunted by something far more patient and relentless than any predator it had evolved to evade. The exercise began at midday with the characteristic efficiency of academy operations. 4 teams of students spread across the hunting ground, their equipment arrays glowing with sensor data and tactical displays. Advanced gravitational scanners swept the terrain, while pheromone detectors analyzed chemical traces in the air. The teams moved with practiced coordination, following protocols developed over centuries of galactic hunting tradition. Marcus Chen walked to the starting point, carrying nothing but a simple pack, a primitive knife, and what appeared to be a modified projectile weapon. Professor Kethvar and several other faculty members observed from the command center, their interest piqued by this unprecedented situation. "Sensor readings indicate the Shadowcat moved northwest initially," reported Dr. Vexani, the Academy's tactical analysis specialist. "All teams are following standard search patterns based on the creature's projected movement algorithms." On the main display, 4 groups of life signs moved systematically across the terrain, their technological signatures bright against the holographic landscape. A single, smaller signature moved alone along a completely different path. "The human is going the wrong direction," observed Professor Kethvar's assistant, a young Zephyrian whose crystalline body chimed with confusion. "The creature's trail leads northwest, but he's heading southwest." Marcus had indeed chosen an unusual path. While the other teams pursued direct tracking methods, he knelt beside a small stream that wound through the forest sector. He cupped water in his hands, tasted it, then examined the muddy banks with intense concentration. What the observers couldn't understand was that Marcus wasn't following the Shadowcat at all. He was thinking like one. The questions he had asked about the creature's behavior weren't academic curiosity. They were tactical intelligence gathering. A solitary nocturnal hunter that feared aerial predators would need water, shelter, and territory that offered both protection and hunting opportunities. Marcus studied the terrain with eyes trained by thousands of years of human hunting evolution. He noted wind patterns by watching grass movement, identified game trails by subtle changes in vegetation, and read the land story in ways that no technological sensor could replicate. Meanwhile, the first team encountered their initial challenge. Their sensors indicated the Shadowcat had passed through a rocky canyon system, but the creature's energy signature was scattered and confusing. "Multiple readings," reported Susvek, his scaled features intense with concentration. "The creature appears to have doubled back several times, possibly trying to confuse pursuers." His teammate, a tall Aquarian whose gill slits fluttered with stress, consulted her tactical display. "Pheromone traces are inconsistent. The creature may be using natural chemical camouflage." They spent precious time analyzing contradictory data, while their equipment struggled to process the Shadowcat's evolved evasion tactics. Marcus, meanwhile, had found what he was looking for: a natural clearing where several game trails converged near a reliable water source. The area showed signs of regular animal activity. And most importantly, it offered the Shadow Cat multiple escape routes while maintaining visual cover from above. He settled into position with the patience that had once allowed his ancestors to wait motionless for hours, while hunting mammoth on the African savanna. This wasn't about chasing prey. It was about understanding where prey needed to go and being there first. The second team had advanced farther than the others, their coordination allowing them to cover more ground. Zixara's natural empathic abilities helped her team anticipate the creature's emotional state, while Rocktar's geological knowledge guided them through the rocky terrain. Stress indicators suggest the creature is aware of pursuit, Zixara reported, her tentacles shifting color with concentration. It's becoming more erratic in its movement patterns. Affirmative, confirmed their technical specialist. Energy readings show increased metabolic activity. The creature is expending energy on evasion rather than normal behavior. They were close, but their advanced technology had become a disadvantage. Every scanner sweep and energy probe was detected by the Shadow Cat's keen senses, alerting it to their presence and driving it toward increasingly defensive behavior. In the command center, faculty members watched with growing fascination as the exercise developed along unexpected lines. The human has been stationary for over an hour, noted Dr. Vexani. Is he experiencing equipment failure? Professor Kethvar's compound eyes remained fixed on Marcus's position.
I don't believe so.
Observe his location. It's a natural convergence point for multiple travel routes. If I understand correctly, he's not pursuing the creature at all. Then what is he doing? Something we haven't seen in 700 years of Academy operations, the professor replied thoughtfully. He's hunting. As afternoon shadows lengthened, the technological teams continued their systematic search. Their equipment was functioning perfectly, their coordination was textbook, and their determination was admirable. They were also making every mistake that countless prey species had learned to exploit over millions of years of evolution. They were loud, predictable, and focused entirely on following rather than anticipating. Marcus remained motionless in his chosen position, his breathing slow and controlled. His awareness expanded to encompass every sound and scent carried on the afternoon breeze. He wasn't waiting for the Shadow Cat to make a mistake. He was waiting for it to do exactly what millions of years of evolution had programmed it to do when, faced with persistent technological pursuit, run to the safest place it knew. As the sun reached its highest point, the technological teams had covered significant ground but found themselves increasingly frustrated. Their sophisticated equipment, designed to track energy signatures and biological markers, struggled against a creature that had evolved specifically to evade detection. Team Alpha, led by a methodical Centaurian with cybernetic enhancements, had traced the Shadow Cat's path through a series of false trails. Gravitational sensors indicate the creature has been moving in a spiral pattern, reported their leader, his artificial eye whirring as it processed multiple data streams. Each loop brings it closer to the central rocky formation. Team Beta, despite Zixara's empathic abilities, found themselves chasing emotional echoes rather than the actual creature. I'm detecting residual fear patterns throughout this area, she reported, her tentacles rippling with confusion. But they're overlapping and contradictory. The creature has been here multiple times, possibly over several days. Professor Kethvar monitored the exercise with growing interest. Dr. Vexani, what's the human's current status? Still stationary, came the reply. Biosignature indicates he's remarkably calm. Heart rate and stress hormones are actually below baseline levels. Either he's given up entirely or... She paused, studying her readings more carefully. Or what? Or he's in some kind of meditative state. I've never seen readings like this from an active hunter. What the sensors couldn't measure was Marcus's complete integration with his environment. This was a skill developed over countless generations of human hunters who survived by becoming part of the landscape itself. His breathing had synchronized with the wind patterns. His awareness expanded beyond his immediate vicinity to encompass the entire ecosystem around him. He heard the distant calls of native bird analogs, felt the subtle vibrations of small creatures moving through underground burrows, and sensed the complex chemical messages carried by air currents from different parts of the forest. This wasn't meditation, it was a predatory focus that modern galactic civilization had never needed to develop. Team Gamma encountered their first major obstacle when their equipment began malfunctioning near a series of magnetic anomalies in the rocky terrain. Sensors are giving contradictory readings, reported their draconian leader. The creature's trail appears to split into multiple directions simultaneously. Impossible, replied their technical specialist, a highly logical Vulcarian whose analytical processes were the envy of other species. Perhaps the creature has accessed dimensional folding technology. They spent another hour theorizing about impossible scenarios while the Shadow Cat used simple, ancient tactics, backtracking along its own path using hard ground to avoid leaving tracks, and timing its movements to coincide with natural sound patterns that would mask its passage. Team Delta, the most aggressive of the groups, had pushed deeper into the territory than any others. Their leader, a fierce warrior-class Kaldorian, believed in direct pursuit over subtle tracking. We'll force the creature into increasingly desperate evasion maneuvers until it makes a mistake, he declared to his teammates. They were loud, persistent, and absolutely certain that superior firepower and determination would overcome any prey's natural advantages. This strategy might have worked against many galactic species, but it was exactly the wrong approach against a creature that had evolved to survive by avoiding confrontation entirely. As afternoon wore on, something interesting began happening in the command center. Junior faculty members who had initially dismissed the human's unconventional approach found themselves drawn to his display screen. "Look at the pattern," whispered a young Etherian instructor. "All 4 teams are driving the creature toward the central area. They're not coordinating this, but their pursuit routes are creating a funnel effect." Dr. Vexani enhanced the tactical display, showing movement patterns over the last 3 hours. "You're right. The creature is being systematically pushed away from its preferred terrain and toward," she highlighted Marcus's position, "toward the only secure location in that entire sector." Professor Kethavar's mandibles clicked rapidly with realization. He's not hunting the creature. He's hunting the hunt itself. This concept was so foreign to galactic hunting traditions that several faculty members required explanation. The idea of predicting where prey would go based on the behavior of other predators was not part of any curriculum in the known galaxy. "But how could he know the other team's strategies?" asked a confused instructor. "He hasn't had access to our tactical databases or training protocols." "Because," Professor Keithvar replied slowly, "predator behavior follows predictable patterns regardless of species or technology level. What we're seeing is pattern recognition that operates on a completely different level than our analytical methods." As the afternoon shadows grew longer, Marcus finally moved. He had been motionless for over 2 hours, but now he shifted position with fluid precision. He moved upstream along the small creek, using the water to mask any sound, staying low and keeping natural cover between himself and the probable approach routes. He wasn't stalking the Shadow Cat. He was positioning himself at the exact location where a panicked creature would inevitably arrive when 4 coordinated teams finally drove it from its comfort zone. The waiting was almost over. In the command center, tension built as all 5 tracking signatures began converging on the central rocky area. 4 teams armed with the most advanced hunting technology in the galaxy, and 1 human with primitive weapons and an understanding of predator psychology that predated their civilizations. "All teams report creature contact imminent," Dr. Vexani announced. "Energy signatures indicate the Shadow Cat is in full evasion mode." "What about the human?" Still moving slowly along the creek. Wait." Her voice carried sudden surprise. He's stopped again. Right at the base of the main rock formation, Professor Kethavar studied the display with all 4 of his eyes. "Dr. Vexani, in your professional opinion, what's about to happen?" "Based on our models, the teams will converge simultaneously, and the creature will be forced to take shelter in the rock caves. Standard protocol calls for technological containment and systematic cave-by-cave search. And what do you think the human expects to happen?" Dr. Vexani was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a note of dawning understanding. "I think he expects the Shadow Cat to come to him." The convergence happened exactly as Marcus had predicted. Team Alpha approached from the northeast, their sensors painting the rocky formation with detection beams. Team Beta moved in from the southeast, Zixara's empathic abilities finally locking onto the Shadow Cat's genuine fear signature. Team Gamma advanced from the west, their equipment still struggling with magnetic interference but their determination unshaken. Team Delta pushed hard from the northwest, their aggressive tactics having finally cornered their quarry. The shadow cat found itself exactly where millions of years of evolution had taught it to go when threatened, the safest possible. Terrain with multiple escape routes and defensible positions. The creature bounded through the forest toward the rocky outcropping, its natural camouflage making it nearly invisible, except to the most sophisticated sensors. In the command center, excitement built as all 4 teams reported imminent contact. Visual confirmation on the target, called Team Alpha's leader. Creature is moving toward the central rock formation as predicted. Teams Beta and Gamma have sealed the southern approaches, reported Dr. Vexani. Team Delta is maintaining pressure from the north. The creature has no choice but to take refuge in the cave system. Professor Kethavar watched Marcus's biosignature with fascination. The human's heart rate had actually decreased as the moment of contact approached. Remarkable. Most hunters show elevated stress responses during the final approach. This human appears to be entering an even deeper state of calm. What they couldn't understand was that Marcus was experiencing something his species had evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. The complete certainty that comes from perfect preparation meeting perfect opportunity. This wasn't stress. This was the moment every instinct in his body had been designed for. The shadow cat burst from the forest cover like liquid darkness, its form barely visible even to enhanced sensors. It moved with desperate speed toward what it perceived as safety, a narrow creek bed that offered both water and concealment, leading to caves where no ground-based predator could follow. Marcus had been waiting at that exact spot for 3 hours. The creature never saw him. One moment it was bounding along the creek toward shelter. The next moment a primitive projectile struck it with precision that shocked every observer. The tranquilizer dart, a simple chemical delivery system that any academy student would have dismissed as laughably primitive, found its mark with accuracy that technological targeting systems would have envied. The shadow cat stumbled, confused by the sudden chemical intrusion into its system, and found itself facing something it had never encountered before. A bipedal predator that seemed to radiate calm certainty rather than aggressive pursuit. Marcus approached slowly, speaking in low, steady tones. The shadow cat's consciousness faded peacefully as the tranquilizer took effect, its last sensation being the strange realization that this predator carried no scent of fear or excitement. Only patient competence. In the command center, stunned silence greeted the exercise's conclusion. Target secured, came Marcus's calm voice over the communication system. Exercise complete. Dr. Vexani stared at her readings in disbelief. Confirmed. Human has successfully captured the target creature using primitive projectile methods. The 4 technological teams, who had been converging on the cave system with sophisticated containment equipment, found themselves staring at empty rocks while their primitive equipped classmate calmly secured their objective. How? Whispered the young Etherian instructor. How did he know exactly where the creature would go? Professor Kethavar's compound eyes remained fixed on the display, showing Marcus carefully checking the shadow cat's condition and applying basic medical monitoring to ensure the creature's well-being.
Because, my dear colleague, we have just witnessed something our curricula never prepared us for.
We've seen predator behavior that operates on principles we don't teach because we never needed to learn them. As the teams made their way to the conclusion point, the conversations among students revealed a mixture of confusion, admiration, and dawning respect. These were beings who had trained their entire lives in the most advanced hunting techniques known to galactic civilization, and they had just been outperformed by someone using methods their ancestors might have dismissed as quaint. I don't understand how he predicted our search patterns, admitted Sisvek, as his team approached the creek. We were using completely different methodologies. Zixara's tentacles rippled with a color pattern that indicated deep thought. Perhaps that was exactly the point. We were all using advanced techniques, but we were still following predictable behavioral patterns. Rocktar's rocky features shifted into something approaching admiration. He wasn't tracking the creature at all. He was tracking us. When all 5 teams finally assembled at the creek, Marcus was sitting quietly beside the peacefully unconscious shadow cat, monitoring its vital signs with equipment borrowed from his basic field kit. He looked up as his classmates approached, his expression friendly and slightly tired. Interesting exercise, he said simply. Your technology is impressive, but the creature was smart enough to use it against you. How did you know where it would go? asked the Centaurian team leader, his cybernetic eye whirring as it tried to process data that didn't fit any known hunting algorithm. Marcus smiled that easy smile that several students were beginning to recognize carried deeper implications than they had initially realized. It wasn't about knowing where it would go. It was about understanding why it would go there. The shadow cat stirred slightly, its consciousness returning as the mild tranquilizer wore off. Marcus backed away slowly, giving the creature space to orient itself and escape if it chose to do so. As the magnificent predator bounded away into the forest, completely unharmed but significantly wiser about the varieties of hunters it might encounter, the assembled students found themselves staring at their human classmate with entirely new perspectives. They had come to the academy to learn advanced hunting techniques. They were beginning to suspect they might learn something far more fundamental about what it truly meant to be a predator. The evening debrief session took place in the academy's main analysis chamber, where holographic displays showed detailed breakdowns of the day's exercise. Students sat in their species' typical groupings, but for the first time since orientation, many found their attention focused on the quiet human who had fundamentally altered their understanding of what hunting could be. Professor Kethvar stood before the assembly, his forearms gesturing toward tactical displays that showed movement patterns, energy expenditures, and time comparisons. Today's exercise has provided us with unprecedented data about hunting methodologies, he began, his mandibles clicking with what his students had learned to recognize as scientific excitement. Team Alpha covered 18 kilometers using advanced gravitational sensors and achieved target proximity in 4 hours and 37 minutes. Team Beta, utilizing empathic tracking, covered 15 kilometers in 4 hours and 12 minutes. Team Gamma, despite equipment challenges, managed 14 kilometers in 4 hours and 41 minutes. Team Delta's aggressive pursuit covered 22 kilometers in 3 hours and 59 minutes. The professor paused, allowing the competitive accomplishments to register among the students. These were impressive statistics by any galactic standard. Marcus Chen, he continued, covered 3 kilometers in 5 hours and 17 minutes, using no technological enhancement beyond basic communication equipment. Several students shifted uncomfortably. By traditional metrics, the human's performance appeared to be the worst of all participants. However, Professor Kethvar's tone carried new undertones. Marcus achieved successful target acquisition, while all technological teams were still engaged in search patterns. More significantly, his energy expenditure was 67% lower than any other participant, and his stress indicators remained below baseline throughout the entire exercise. Dr. Vexani activated a series of comparative displays. The data suggests we may need to reconsider our fundamental assumptions about hunting efficiency. Traditional galactic methods prioritize technological superiority and direct pursuit. What we observed today was a completely different paradigm. Sisvek raised a scaled hand. Professor, I still don't understand how primitive methods could outperform advanced sensor technology. The mathematics don't support this outcome. Marcus had remained quietly attentive throughout the technical analysis, but now he spoke up. Would it help if I explained my thought process? Please. Professor Kethvar gestured encouragingly. Marcus stood, his movement drawing the attention of every being in the chamber. Where I come from, we learned a long time ago that chasing prey is usually inefficient. Prey animals are faster, know the terrain better, and have millions of years of evolutionary advantage in evasion. So instead of chasing, we learn to think. He moved to the central display, pointing to the terrain map. I didn't track the shadow cat because I didn't need to. I tracked you. The silence that followed this statement carried a weight of realization among the assembled students. Every species in this room has hunting instincts shaped by your home worlds. But those instincts follow predictable patterns. When faced with a fleeing prey animal, you pursue. When your technology gives you advantages, you rely on them. When you work in teams, you coordinate in ways that seem logical to your species. Marcus highlighted the convergence patterns on the display. But from the prey's perspective, 4 coordinated teams using advanced technology create a predictable pressure pattern. The shadow cat wasn't just running randomly. It was being systematically driven toward the only location that offered safety from multiple technological threats. Zixara's tentacles rippled with fascination. You used our own hunting instincts against us. Not against you, Marcus corrected gently. I use them as part of a larger system. On Earth we call it persistence hunting. It's not about being faster or stronger than your prey. It's about being more patient and understanding the ecosystem well enough to be in the right place when the prey's own survival instincts bring them to you. Rocktars. Rocky features show deep consideration. This suggests that technological advancement might actually create predictable vulnerabilities. In some situations, yes, Marcus agreed. Technology is a tool, but tools can become limitations if you depend on them exclusively. The shadow cat evolved to evade natural predators using natural methods. When it encountered technological pursuit, it fell back on strategies that had worked for millions of years. Professor Kethvar's compound eyes gleamed with scientific enthusiasm. Marcus, would you be willing to demonstrate these principles in other scenarios? Perhaps teach some workshops on pre-technological hunting methods? Of course, Marcus replied. But I'd also like to learn your techniques. Some of the sensor applications I saw today were incredible. I'm thinking there might be ways to combine approaches that could be more effective than either method alone. This suggestion sparked immediate interest among the students. The idea of integrating primitive and advanced techniques hadn't occurred to anyone in their advanced academic environment. Over the following weeks, Marcus Chen's presence at the Galactic Hunter Academy created ripple effects that extended far beyond a single classroom. Students who had never questioned their technological dependence began exploring fundamental hunting principles. Faculty members found themselves researching pre-civilization hunting methods for the first time in their careers. The Academy's library systems, designed to house the most advanced tactical knowledge in the galaxy, suddenly included requests for information about tracking by scent, reading natural signs, and understanding prey psychology without technological intervention. More importantly, students began to understand that being an apex predator wasn't about having the best equipment or the most advanced training. It was about adaptability, patience, and the willingness to think beyond conventional approaches. Marcus never forgot that he was the student among them, learning technologies and techniques that surpassed anything Earth had developed. But his classmates learned something equally valuable, that wisdom sometimes came from the most unexpected sources, and that the most effective hunters weren't always the ones with the most sophisticated tools. In the end, the human from the Class 12 Deathworld didn't just join the Academy. He helped redefine what it meant to be a hunter in a galaxy that had forgotten some of its most fundamental truths about the relationship between predator and prey. The Academy's motto, carved in ancient script above the main entrance, read "Excellence through Innovation." After Marcus Chen's first semester, many students understood those words in an entirely new way.